And welcome to Visceral Reactions. I'm Matthew Jimenez.
I'm Quinton Williams.
The more the horror, the more the excitement.
Whoa, more.
More horror.
Hinger.
The holidays can be a tough time for a lot of folks for a lot of different reasons. But family is supposed to make it better. The reason for the season in most cases. However, sometimes family makes us crazy. Like, something under the surface is just ready to erupt. Now, we've reached the boiling point, and the wholesome family unit is now a detriment, a target for all the pent-up hostility that's been building over the years. Some of us take these feelings and bottle them up, some for therapy, some even wait to unload them on their own kids. And then some of us decide to resort to murder. All happy families are alike, but the unhappy families in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho and William Asher's Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker are unique in their own traumatic ways.
So if you want to know how very much dated we're recording this, it's right after Christmas.
The perfect time to watch something.
Family. These are family movies.
Yeah, these are family movies. Just
You can
not the
watch
kind of
it
family you want.
with your aunt and uncle, your mom, your grandpa,
Sometimes they're the same person.
sister who's squeamish about horror. She'll love it.
So, the theme for today's episode, quite clearly, is the obsessive family. Today we're going to be looking at the post-war American family and looking at how a lot of different socio-historical events and feelings, this atmosphere contributed to the dissolution of the American family. Issues that range anywhere from hydrogen bombs to the Vietnam War,
Communism,
Ronald Reagan being president, all of these things. Some of them terrifying, some of them things that are good, and then some of them are atomic bombs.
People are so afraid of atomic bombs.
Yeah, when they should be afraid of Ronald Reagan. So Psycho comes out in 1960. Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker in 1982. So we have pretty wide open
I think
time.
Our longest gap between films.
Yeah, we got over 20 years
That's
here.
like 2 generations?
Just one.
One?
I think a generation's
Okay.
20 years. But still,
A significant amount of time with a significant amount of change.
very much so. Lots of change.
But still, one of the main things that haven't changed is people's fear of communism.
Yep.
I don't know if there's any communist subject that can be extrapolated from these 2 films. Maybe you just like saying it.
See, that's where I think things get really interesting because I think that the terror is there in a very subtle way.
Mm-hmm.
So the first of the threats to the American family definitely lingers over Psycho. Even if it has nothing to do with it, it's there because it's there for all of these movies coming out, being made in 1959 and then released in 1960, is the hydrogen bomb.
I think around this point, the book Alas Babylon was published, which is about a community banding together and surviving after the bombs fell.
I think this
So
is
it's like the threat is very much real. It was real in the 50s. It's a decade has passed. It's just as real. If not, we're probably at the height of the Cold War. So like any day now, people are like, oh, the bombs are coming.
Yeah, I mean, just 2 years after Psycho's released in 1962, you've got the Cuban Missile Crisis. Between that and the Vietnam War itself are definitely moments where the Cold War is anything but cold. The hydrogen bomb that turned fears of the atomic bomb and made them look practically childish and also childless. That's a very interesting Freudian slip. Was detonated in the mid 50s. I think it was 1955 in the Bikini Atoll. That the largest nuclear detonation that the United States has ever done, which I think would probably make it the largest one that's ever been done in human history. And so that's just a couple of years before Psycho comes out. So we have this time in which people are very much aware that the world could end at any moment. And when you have the infamous duck and cover...
Go under your desk, kids.
Yeah.
That'll save you.
I mean, both of my parents participated in that,
Right.
if you want to call it
I think
participated.
my parents may have too, because they were very much alive in the 80s where the Cold War still happening, maybe very much lax as it was 30, 20 years ago, but still an issue.
And so the classroom is not a safe place for children anymore. The idea is that it could happen anywhere to anyone. So there's always that lingering threat in the back of people's minds. And when you have that paired with, of course, the threat of communism lurking underneath pretty much everything, every fabric of American society, there's this idea, there's this feeling, this belief that nothing is sacred anymore. The same year that Psycho comes out, this wonderful little invention called the birth control pill comes out. And here we have something that immediately and very literally ushers in the sexual liberation that is one of the defining characteristics of the 60s and 70s, because so much of that sexual liberation would not have been able to take place were it not for this very world-changing, like in the course of human civilization, little invention.
It's funny because it's the same year that Kennedy was elected, and Kennedy was Catholic. And in any other Catholic view, it would be like, oh, this is heinous, blasphemous, a birth control pill. But Kennedy probably loved it.
Yeah, he definitely benefited from it. Whether he was ethically or religiously opposed to it or not, I have no
clue. He was just sliving it to his mistresses. Nothing happened.
The sexual act that exists to create children, now it's something that people can just do for fun and not have to worry to the extent that they had to prior to the pill's existence. Now, the family, which doesn't exist without sex, can continue to not exist, but the sex remains.
I'm sure a lot of people were thinking when the pill came out was like, this is going to extinct the family idea.
I'm sure there were plenty of people that did. And if it weren't for the pill, who knows how many people would be on the planet today. And that's not necessarily a good thing, that there's a lot of people that aren't here right now. So we have the pill. So now for the more conservative-minded, and I don't mean that in the sense of Republican.
Rigid.
Yeah, just more, very uptightly traditional.
Yep.
When I say conservative in this context, these people, for a large swath of the country, probably close to the majority of Americans, definitely the majority of middle-class white Americans.
And probably in their late 30s, 40s. Older.
Exactly. They're looking at the bomb as this existential threat.
Yep.
And the pill is this more tangible threat that attacks any sense of holiness, because now life that should organically and naturally happen is being prevented. So we have these two things, but no need to fear if you're, the average Kansas white, middle class family, because you have a television and that makes everything better.
Television, you can just turn it on, forget all your troubles.
Exactly.
But it'll rot your brain.
You can turn on I Love Lucy or Father Knows Best or Leave It to Beaver.
Bonanza.
Any of these shows during the early 50s are all trying to reinforce this idea of the family unit as something wholesome.
Yep.
And these images, we're only talking, people have a couple of channels at most,
Like 2?
I mean, depending on where people live,
right?
You'd be lucky if you're getting more than like 2 channels. And so the images that are just everywhere on television aren't just reaching a small number of people.
It's reaching everyone.
At the turn of the 50s, I think something like around 20% of the country owned a TV.
But it just shot up.
By the end of the decade, it was like over 90% of people.
And with television, you have that same sort of conservative ideas and views being presented to you, because in a little old show called The Dick Van Dyke Show, you had Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore. They didn't sleep in the same bed. They had separate beds, which just further connects the idea of that rigidness of like intimacy and sex and what couples do behind closed doors. It very much connects to the same idea of like the pill. And interestingly enough, you have that for television, but you don't have that for film. More importantly, you don't have that for this film.
before jumping right into the film. Speaking of sex and sexuality, most importantly, and how it's presented, the year that Psycho is being filmed in 1959, there are a couple of movies that come out that really upended a lot of sexual taboos. So one of them was Otto Preminger's Anatomy of a Murder with Jimmy Stewart. Where he's a lawyer, and the case involves the rape of a young woman. The way that the case is handled, the explicit nature of what happened isn't seen as much as it's told.
Right.
And so...
Because film wouldn't allow anything physically to be shown.
The film introduces American audiences, even just topically, to something that would not have... that just wasn't being handled.
Probably not since like 1930, just a few handful of films before the Hays Code was enacted.
And even then, it wouldn't have been referenced explicitly.
Out loud, yeah.
And the other, in a completely different way, and for something completely different, is Some Like It Hot. You have Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis dressing up in drag to avoid being killed by the mob, and they become friends with Marilyn Monroe. And obviously, both of them have the hots for it, especially Tony Curtis. But they're supposed to be women in the swing band that she's a part of. And so we have these beautiful and absolutely hilarious moments where gender conventions are, just reduced to nothing. There's a character that falls in love with Jack Lemmon while he's dressed as a woman. And it's one of the most famous moments in all of Hollywood history of Jack Lemmon just kind of stuck on this speedboat with the, with this older guy. And he tells the guy that he's a man, that he's not a woman. And the guy's response is, well, nobody's perfect.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's very progressive for the time.
Absolutely. And so,
sex change operations were not new. They've been doing that since the 20s, but it's not as,
And so the idea, before this, and the film is playing around with this, that drag is something that's played for laughs.
Yeah.
There are moments where Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis have these genuine bonding moments with Marilyn Monroe's character, as well as other characters, and it's as close as a guy in the 50s could come to knowing what it's like literally to be in a woman's shoes.
Very loosely.
Yeah, the film explores that.
Yeah.
And so this is the moment where we have Joseph Stefano adapting Robert Bloch's novel, Psycho, for Alfred Hitchcock. Now, 1959 was also an important year for Hitchcock, not just because he started filming Psycho, but because earlier in the year, one of his best, a lot of people would argue, his best movie, in addition to just one of the most entertaining movies ever made, was released, and that's North by Northwest with Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint.
When I watched that film 4 or 5 years ago for the first time, I was obsessed with Cary Grant's gray suit. I wanted that suit.
Yeah,
I wanted to just flaunt around look at me, Mr. Suave, man.
And that effect, the movie was an absolute
hit,
box office sensation. Exactly. And it was filmed in VistaVision. It was in Technicolor.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful Technicolor.
And in North by Northwest, and the movie before that, Vertigo, which
another hit.
Most people today would say is the greatest movie of all time. And then just a few years before that, you've got To Catch a Thief. You've got Rear Window. You have all of these very lush Technicolor masterpieces that are very big. North by Northwest literally has its climax on Mount Rushmore.
Inside Mount Rushmore too.
Yeah. And so you have that. You have, in Vertigo, you have Jimmy Stewart saving Kim Novak from San Francisco Bay. You have that, and then we get to Psycho.
Which we must iterate. At the point of Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock was not hurting at all, both critically, financially, anything like that. He was at the top of his game.
Yeah, for the past 20 years. He'd been working in the United States. And
he had just, he's been doing his television show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
And then he decides to do this very small, very dingy, very black and white movie.
Yes, we have to iterate that, and I had to iterate the phrase before that Hitchcock was at the height of his game because the studio didn't want to do this film and they gave him a really small budget. That's why it's not as grandiose as his other films. It's not like this was like to try to revive his career. His career was fine, but it was just the fact that the studio didn't really want to produce this, so it kind of produced it out of pocket.
For right under $1 million.
Yeah.
And even though it would end up making about $50 million worldwide, the movie never clicked with critics. Nobody really knew what to do with it.
Because
it's weird.
It went to a lot of territories that films at the time didn't really go in.
If at all.
Yeah, especially as we mentioned, because the opening of the film is very risque for 1960.
Opening of the film has a camera going through a window. And in this little apartment, we see Janet Leigh putting on a bra and John Gavin
staying in the bra as well for most of the scene.
Staying in a bra. And John Gavin, as naturally anyone would assume, her boyfriend. Though, as the dialogue very quickly reveals to us, she's not his girlfriend, she's his mistress. And
yes, technically, because he
says he's trying to leave his wife. Now, we've seen that not play out numerous times in media across the board.
But I don't remember if he was still with his wife or the both of them were still financing divorce papers. I don't think they're leaving the relationship because of Janet. It was something else. I think they're in the midst of divorce anyway, which, giving credit, is very more tasteful than him cheating on his wife.
For Marion Crane, Janet Leigh's character, she is still very much hurt by the fact that the relationship is not
done with.
That his marriage is not over and done with because she wants to be the next Mrs. Sam Loomis.
Yeah.
One of the problems is that he is strapped for cash.
Because he works at a hardware store.
Yeah.
But he wears a suit, so it's unclear what he does. He's not exactly, Cary Grant, suave, rich Cary Grant.
Exactly. So Marion goes back to work, and after seizing an opportunity to steal $40,000 from her
boss's client.
Yeah. Right? It's from both of them.
Yeah.
She steals it from work.
Yep.
Because she's supposed to put this $40,000 into the bank.
She has a lapse of judgment and it's like, ooh, money.
Yep. While she's driving to the bank, she has the idea of not going to the bank, and she decides to keep driving.
She goes home with the money. She doesn't drive it with the bank. She goes home with the money, packs a bag.
Yeah. She's
leaving. She's not planning on staying.
We are now in the hot seat with her.
Yeah.
Now we are accomplices. We have seen her in a very intimate setting. We've seen her make this decision that no matter if it works out for good or bad is going to change the rest of her life.
Yes. She's already in it.
She's in it, and we're in it with her. So on the run, Marion Crane decides to sell her car.
Because he got very nervous with a police officer who was really doing his job, and he's very rightful to be suspicious because he's being very suspicious.
Yeah. Then she keeps driving out west, and the rain really starts to come down.
It's coming down.
She can't see where she's going. There are little instances like this where the film is very much telling you exactly what's going to happen to her. Then she pulls up to the last place she'll ever be, the Bates Motel.
Lovely Bates Motel. It is lovely. It's small. It's quaint. There's a nice grand house behind it.
Yeah.
Nothing ominous about that.
No. It's like out in the middle of like a swamp area, it seems. It's weird. And so the only person that seems to be there, Norman Bates, decides, he helps her out of the car, gets her settled. He's the innkeeper, the only person that works there.
Kind of charming.
Kind
of awkward.
It's Anthony Perkins being extremely relatable.
Very Clark Kent. When I see him, it's like Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent.
That's interesting. I honestly, if I had to do a remake, I would absolutely have Andrew Garfield as Norman Bates.
I mean, Vince Vaughn?
No.
Yes, Andrew Garfield, because they have that both like skinniness about them.
There's this idea that Norman Bates is someone who does not look physically threatening at all.
No, he does. You can tell he doesn't get out much. He's not good on social cues, but he's doing his best.
You know, he is not. I mean, you look at him and you're like, oh, there's no way.
He's harmless.
He wouldn't hurt a fly.
He's a bit.
Yeah.
He's a bit weird, ever so slightly
He
creepy.
is weird.
Just how he presents himself.
But like in a harmless
Yeah.
way. The irony is that Norman Bates is based on Ed Gein.
Or Ed Gein, depending on.
Is it Gein?
Now, I think it's Ed Gein.
Is it Gein? Okay.
Yeah, maybe you may be right.
I don't.
Yes.
You know.
Ed Gein's very interesting because he would become the inspiration and premise for horror movies for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Everyone loves old Eddie.
So the Ghoul of Plainfield. I mean, anytime someone's coming from a place called Plainfield, that shows you that there really can't be anything else to do but dig up corpses.
I mean, there's nothing else.
Yeah. So
dig up corpses, make furniture out of them,
Yeah. So,
kill
like-
people, make furniture out of them.
So the only thing that I mean, I'm not a serial killer person, also not a serial killer.
Maybe you should have started with the second one.
Yeah, we'll go with that. And there are a lot of things like I don't know this shit. Like I don't like I was never someone to be obsessively into them or like find them fascinating.
I kind of find them fascinating because late teen me, not because of angsty and rebellious, because I'm just like, how could a human being kill so many people for so long and not get away with it until the last minute?
That dimension of it is that's fascinating. But as far as like looking into like the personal lives really, or looking into like the murders themselves, not so much. And so it wasn't until reading about him for this that I learned that he's not technically a serial killer because he's only killed confirmed 2 people.
That's fascinating because of the film. We'll get to that.
Exactly. 2 women,
Yep.
both middle-aged, I believe. And the more, I think, gruesome things, because shortly after Ed Gein is doing this, we've got the Clutter family being murdered in Kansas, which is
I don't even know about that.
the basis for Truman Capote writing in Cold Blood, which, I mean, to this day is the benchmark for narrative nonfiction, period, but also for writing about crime.
Okay.
You know, like I was reading that like cops weren't, like they didn't get him until after he murdered the second woman, but they had found in his home all of these objects
Made.
from body parts.
Because he killed the 2 women, but he
then
also grave robbed a lot.
Yes, something I didn't know, and this will be obvious that this is the aspect that Robert Bloch was inspired to create Norman Bates, because all of the 9 people that Ed Gein dug up were all middle-aged women who resembled his mother. He dug them up very shortly after they were buried because he wanted to make a woman's suit.
Oh, yeah. Also, this film also inspired Tom Harris to write Silence of the Lamb.
And, of course, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Probably the most
obvious or the most direct reference to Ed Gein. Unfortunately, one of the things that I saw was an image of one of the face masks that he had made and that he would wear. Like, honestly, if you had told me that it was a prop from any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, I would have believed you. You know, Buffalo Bill is focusing on the
woman's suit part.
Yeah, on the desire for sex change. Yes. Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Leatherface. They're focusing on the Leatherface part
and the things that Ed Gein made out of the body parts.
Yeah, and Psycho is focusing on a boy's relationship with his mother.
Mother's a boy's best friend.
Yeah. Norman Bates reveals to Marion in almost every, like, if not every other line, then like every couple of lines, something about his mother.
Yep.
Whether it's what his mother wants him to do, doesn't want him to do, what she thinks about something. We are not privileged to forget about Mrs. Bates.
Yep. We see her in the window. We hear her voice. She's there.
She's there. Her presence, very much like the atomic bomb.
She's going to
Mrs.
explode
Bates
any minute now.
Is there in every moment. And you're just waiting. As a viewer, you are waiting for her to pop up. Yep. We get this very touching conversation between Marion and Norman in his study area.
Little parlor room.
In a parlor.
Little break room.
Yeah, where we have a collection of taxidermied stuffed birds. All of these birds are looking down at whoever's in the room.
Yep.
As we will see in like every interaction throughout the film, we are looking at someone else who is looking at someone else. The birds are there and, very ominous. Like, one of them's like a raven or like a crow or whatever. There's an owl.
Yeah.
Like, these aren't canaries that...
these are big birds.
These are big birds that are typically associated with frightful things. And Norman just sitting in his chair, very meekishly responding to Marion's inquiries as to what he does for himself.
Yep.
There's this very, very interesting, just like really brilliant moment of acting for Anthony Perkins where Marion asks Norman something that gets at him defying his mother. And Norman is suddenly not Norman anymore. And he shoots up into the chair very sternly.
Yep.
Prior to this, he is almost always shaking and stuttering in some way. And after this comment, you see the confidence just completely envelop him.
Like Clark Kent becoming Superman.
Yeah, exactly. We get a Norman who, one could argue, in this moment decides to do something. Marion picks up on the cue, which is something that Norman's not really capable of doing. And she decides to go back to her room.
Yep.
Because it's been a long day.
She's tired.
She's done a lot. She's soaked from the rain. She could really use a hot shower. So she decides to do something that nobody has ever seen before in the history of movies, which is absolutely fucking bizarre. But that thing is, she flushes something down a toilet.
Yes. This is the first time anyone's ever seen flushing in a film.
She rips up the math that she had been doing, and instead of throwing it away because she's paranoid that it's going to be used for evidence, she flushes it down the toilet. And we actually see the toilet flush. We see the water go down the drain.
First time
ever. So
in the 60, honestly, 80 odd years of film history, a first. Isn't that great?
We have, and the water going down the drain, especially after what happens, you very quickly realize that the water going down the drain was not a promising sign of what was to come.
It probably started before when Norman was looking at her through a peephole.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, Norman, you were such a good guy, and now you're doing something sleazy. But that would be not the worst thing he does tonight.
Yeah, no. While Marion is getting ready to go into the shower, in a oft imitated and referenced scene.
Like two scenes in film history that are probably referenced more than anything. This scene and Matrix Bullet Time.
Again, we watch Norman watching Marion. Like before, we came in right after Marion was right after she was getting dressed. But now we're watching someone who is enjoying her taking off her clothes. And as she goes to get into the shower, so begins a moment, a scene so popular that you can literally just do a very shitty impression of the sound of the music. And people will know exactly what you're talking about, even if they've never seen the movie.
So I would argue, now this is probably very ignorant of me to say that it's probably not the first jump scare in film history, but it's a very prominent one. Because this film surprisingly has a few jump scares in it. One of them actually kind of got me because it's all quiet. All you hear is the sound of the rushing water. You see a silhouette figure looming in the background.
Yeah.
Curtains open, the music, just this harsh, uncomfortable sound of violins just out of nowhere. A knife screaming. The sound that you hear of flesh, that's Alfred Hitchcock going, I'm going to stab the melon.
It's a cassava melon.
Yes, because he did like a bunch of melons. Like, this doesn't sound right. This one's good.
They tested over 20 melons. Yep. And then someone had the great idea of also using a giant piece of steak.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a giant like sirloin, I believe. And so they just alternated between the two. Okay. And so that way you get the more dense sound of the meat.
Oh, okay.
And then also the like, kind of with the melon.
Another fun fact, do you know how they, you may know, but probably the audience knows who's a really big fan, how they made
the blood?
We'll get to that. Yeah. The grating sound of the violin music. This may be a myth, but I think it's correct. They play the violin using knives. I think that could just be a big Hollywood myth, but I'm pretty sure.
Here we can look it up.
That's knives. As you're looking that up, I'm going to talk about the other fun fact that you were going to mention. There's no blood. There's blood, but it's not blood you think. You all may probably know this more than the violin bit, but they used good old chocolate syrup to mimic the blood. Draining down the shower because fake blood is viscous the right word?
Yeah.
It wasn't thick enough.
Yeah, it didn't
act like actual
the right
blood.
texture. It looks, and especially in black and white.
Looks like blood.
It looks, what's funny is that it looks more like blood than if they had used fake movie blood.
Yep. It would probably been too bright saying that in a black and white film. The scene's over and done with before you can even have time to react. Cuts are very quick and very precise, and then it's gone, and the music just dims down to a low, almost hum.
It's a heartbeat.
While the camera slowly pulls back from Janet Leigh's eye. I don't know how she managed to keep her eye open that long.
So the immediate shot of her eye, the first couple of beats that it's on, that's a still frame.
Oh, okay.
And then it's practically imperceptible if you're not looking for it.
I look for eye twitches when someone's dead.
Where it changes to live, to the next frame. The reason why the camera then cuts away back to the shower is because apparently Janet Leigh took a breath.
Oh no!
And then they had to go back to the toilet. But
it's hard being dead.
So
are you not finding it?
I don't think.
Am I a liar? Damn it.
Yeah, no.
Well, just regard everything I've said for the past half hour. No.
So
why is this scene so important?
Why is it so important? Well, for the first time, like ever, we see someone being brutally stabbed.
Not only someone, the lead.
Yeah. And we have not Janet Leigh really being almost nude on camera, but her body double as well.
Oh, I forgot about that.
We have invested
40 minutes.
Yeah. All of this time.
Yep. And the thing is, it's a wonderful early use. I say early. I don't know if there's other films that had such a big subversion of expectations, but it's a subversion of genre, I'll tell you that much, because for the first 40 minutes, it feels like a traditional Hitchcockian suspense thriller.
Yeah.
Her on the run, her worried about who's watching out for who's going to get her.
And then,
with a snap of the finger,
she's dead.
Becomes a horror movie. Yeah. More horror. It's a proto slasher.
Yeah. So many slashers would not have existed if it weren't for this, including the one that we're talking about later.
Yes.
And,
2, in fact. One very much has a lot of thanks to give to the other.
We have the thing that, quite honestly, the first time that I watched this as a kid made me kind of hate the movie.
So I must say, this was my first time watching it. But being the age we are, what's getting, this scene. Everyone knows this scene. Yeah. So it didn't come to me as a surprise.
Yeah.
It was just great to see it in full context.
And it's the introduction of the false protagonist narrative that we have here, that we are led to believe that Marion Crane is the most important part of this movie. That the money is important. The money which Norman Bates, in getting rid of the mess that his mother
no
has
idea
made,
exists.
he just throws away evidence, and he throws away $40,000 by putting it in the trunk of a car and pushing the car into a lake.
He's very meticulous about evidence cleanup. He's a good boy. He loves his mama.
He does too much, and not just the way that this is filmed or what happens in it. But the fact that this is what's so important about the scene is that it proved to people or showed people that you weren't safe anywhere. I mean, the bathroom is one of the most, like, aside from the bedroom, the bathroom is supposed to be like the other most private space in someone's home. And here you have a woman who is naked and in a shower, completely defenseless,
vulnerable.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, there's the line when Marion gets out of the car when she arrives at the hotel, that the rain was so loud that Norman didn't hear her pull up.
Right.
So we have this introduction of water crashing so loudly that no one can hear what's happening around them. And so when Mrs. Bates walks into the room and proceeds to stab the ever-living shit out of Marion
at least 20 times,
she doesn't hear her. She doesn't hear the footsteps. She doesn't hear the door open. The only thing she hears, and it's this wonderful, like, musical cue of Bernard Herrmann's score coming in when she opens up the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as she turns the water on, the music goes away. And then the music comes back at the very same instant that the curtain is pulled back open.
I love when movies don't use soundtracks at all.
Yeah.
Like, it just...
You don't need it.
No.
There's so much happening in the scene between generally screaming and the sounds of the knife, the water just being...
deafening.
Yeah. And honestly, even if there was music, no one would have been able to hear it, because when it premiered, so many people were screaming that you couldn't even hear the music that everyone connects with the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So
people were terrified of the scene.
Absolutely.
And like, Hitchcock knew this was going to be a big deal. He did like promotional, like, cardboard cutouts or posters where he's like, stay in the theater, don't spoil the film. He wanted this to hit, and it did.
For the first time, you have a filmmaker saying that you need to see every single moment of this movie. The thing that he was worried about was people coming in late.
Oh yeah, that was it too. Yeah.
And not like you wouldn't be allowed in if you showed up late, because anyone who missed even a few minutes completely miss the connection that you're supposed to have with Marion, that would destroy what you're supposed to feel when she gets killed. And so this is the beginning of something that a lot of Marvel movies will do now, of having the director do like a little intro to a movie, telling you, hey, we worked pretty hard on this, don't spoil it for other people, like that kind of stuff. Like this is one of the,
in context,
the early moments.
The new Spider-Man film that came out.
Yeah, of you need to see this. Like,
because like films are here. Back then and even now, it's a big event, big deal.
Yeah, and so Hitchcock just wanted to make sure that you saw all of it. We have the shower. We have Norman running back to his mother's house and screaming, like, what have you done? Yep. Like, the blood. And so we're still very much under the belief that Mrs. Bates is done this, and that
wait, what are you talking about? Of course she has.
Yeah, and so after a detective played by Martin Balsam,
we've seen him before.
Yeah, he's been in this a couple of times.
No, I mean, was he one of the Tovangi men in the Sentinels? Okay, I was just making sure. Because I don't know why I can't remember him in the film. But yes, the same Tovangi men alum. He was always one of my favorite characters in the film. I always liked him.
Balsam's great.
Mm-hmm. He's just so like down to earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
An average Joe.
He goes to investigate Marion's disappearance.
Mm-hmm. Does a really cracking job at it.
He does. I mean, he suspects something so much and is so on the trail that Norman thinks that something needs to be done about him.
Norman's getting a bit nervous. Yes. And he can tell Norman's hiding something.
Yes.
Not him, then his mama.
And so Mrs. Bates gets that knife back out and takes a good rush at...
Yes, so to point out, he had just walked into the Norman somewhere else. He walked into the house up on the hill to question Mrs. Bates very slow and creeping up the stairs. A beautiful bird's eye shot of the stair, the landing, and the doorway.
Yeah.
And then you hear the music again. I have to confess, this got me. I jumped.
Yeah. Because I mean, Mrs. Bates just rushes out of nowhere, and you have this God's eye view of what's happening, and all of a sudden Mrs. Bates is back with the knife,
Russian,
and we watch Martin Balsam fall down the stairs.
It's a bit awkward, but it's really cool.
It is, and it's in a way that looks as if it were done with like a GoPro, kind of almost that
almost
kind
like
of feel.
He's like on behind a green screen and he's just waving his arms. He's not like
he's not actually falling, you know. But
it's a bit weird, but it's really cool.
Yeah, it's effective if anything, for the fact that
very Vertigo-y kind of.
No, it's almost the same as the dream that Jimmy Stewart has about falling when the dream sequence is happening and he ends up spiraling out of control. We are seeing things from Mrs. Bates' perspective on this, and it's another just like perfect little decision to not have us see what's happening, but we see what's happening to the person that it's happening to.
Yes, we don't really see a Mrs. Bates like thought process of her like I have to kill the boy.
Yeah, it's just like it's in the same way that we saw Marion from Mrs. Bates' perspective, and her scream. We see Martin Balsam falling down the stairs from hers, and it's really it's effective. It's very effective, and so we get. This eventually leads to John Gavin, who played Sam, and Vera Miles, who is Marion's
sister.
Yeah, the two of them decide to take a trip over to
because they were waiting for the private investigator, and he hadn't showed up.
Yep, and so they figure, well, something's going on, and we get to the motel again.
Hey, welcome back,
and. They're gonna stay here so long. You should rent out a room, and so like they're finding
they do rent out a room.
Yeah, and they're finding these little bits of information out. Norman's acting even weirder, which is somehow possible. We eventually get to the reveal.
Yeah. So
John Gavin,
Sam,
boyfriend.
Yep. He's distracting Norman while Marion's sister goes up to the house to. Again, you got to speak for that mother. The mother's the key to all this. So she goes to the mother's room. She doesn't find her, but it's interesting. She sees the window, a seat by the window where you always see her silhouette. And you have an imprint on the bed, which you can only give that imprint if something stays there
for a long
time. Very peculiar legacy. Bedridden? What's going on? So she continues her descent down into the basement, which we should point out in an earlier scene that we see Norman pick up her mother, and they're talking to each other, and he puts her down to the basement for her to be safe because he knows trouble's coming. So Marion's sister goes into the basement all the while where Norman's like piecing things together and running off to the house to protect his mom because the mom, has killed people. Marion sees Mrs. Bates back to her at a corner, reaches out her hand slowly. They had to make sure this turn was just right filming this. Just right. Oh my God.
Mrs. Bates is dead.
She's a skeleton.
She's so dead. She is absolutely dead. She's the deadest that anyone. She is so dead that not even Ed Gein would dig her up and use her for anything.
No good parts.
No good parts at all. This woman's been dead for a while.
Yes. The boyfriend and Marion's sister went to the judge to hey, do something about this. The judge informs them that Mrs. Bates has been dead for 10 years.
Yep. So what's been going on?
Yes. So at that moment, she screams and the music comes back what's happening?
Like, oh, God.
The camera pans to the door and out bursts a maniacal Norman Bates in his mother's clothes,
and
wielding a knife with the most sinister grin I have ever seen in film.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. And so this is the moment that viewers all across the world realized that Norman killed Marion.
What a twist.
And that Norman has been dressing up as his mother for who knows how long.
Pretending to be his mom.
Yeah. And himself at the same time.
And we should point out he killed his mom.
Yeah.
Poisoned her and a man she was interested in seeing. So it's because he was jealous.
Yeah.
And the mom, from what we have learned from Norman's point of view, being her, was also jealous. It was this very twisted, quote, quote, loving relationship that both were just demanding and controlling of each other.
There was this idea during the 50s when we get this absurd rise in juvenile delinquency, which was another indication that the family unit was maybe not so great.
Yep.
That one of the reasons was that parents were not involved enough in their children's lives. And so as a response, one of the things that not even just parents started doing, but that mothers in particular started doing, was being what anyone else would call overbearing.
Yes.
And as a result of this, because this coincides with the sexual liberation that's happening in a few years, you have a lot of people expressing non-heteronormative sexualities for, en masse for the first time in a very long time. We have mothers then being blamed for their sons turning out gay.
Yes.
Because they were overbearingly close to them.
Again, for a brief moment, we brought up another film.
Yeah. So there's this this relationship is coming under fire for showing what happens when a person isn't allowed to grow into their own. The thing that they turn into
is
their parent,
their mother.
Yeah, and there's this idea that if you look at the Bates' house as the three structures of the mind, according to Freud.
Oh, okay.
Where you have the superego, the ego, and the id.
Right.
That Mrs. Bates goes from the superego, where she would be controlling everything that Norman, as an individual, as a functioning ego, constantly presiding over him.
Right.
But then he brings the body down into the basement, into the id, which is where the uncontrollable urge, the like true essence of a person, the thing that drives you without you knowing that it's driving you. And so Mrs. Bates goes from being the thing that controls him to the thing that propels him.
Yeah.
Which is a fascinating way of looking at it. But yeah, so we have this conflict of, well, parents can't be smothering,
right?
But they also can't just let their children do whatever the hell they want.
There needs to be a nice middle ground,
and no one knows what that is.
No, probably not even still to this day.
Yeah, exactly. And so Psycho is taking that relationship, and then we get what honestly is the most chilling moment.
Yeah, so
of the entire movie.
There's Norman's been arrested, and there's a psychiatrist talking about Norman's mental capacity, mental health, and honestly, for 1960, it's very well done. It's like very, I wouldn't say progressive, but like they're not treating it as something like vile or like twisted. Like the doctor's almost sympathetic towards Norman's cause, how he's describing Norman's mental health and mental disorder of, at this point, the mother persona has completely taken over.
Yeah. That like Norman's not really
He's not
there.
He's not here anymore.
Yeah. Norman describes his mother as being so gentle that she wouldn't hurt a fly.
Yes. Oh, that's Norman saying that as the mom.
Yeah.
And then you get
the
brief melding of Norman's face with that wonderful, creepy, beautiful,
grin.
Beautifully creepy grin that Anthony Perkins just delivers so perfectly.
Yeah.
With these facial expressions and an imprint of the mother's skull.
Yeah. And right before we see the camera just like freeze for a second, we see the fly land on his hand. And there's just the moment of just like looking at him, looking at us.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying because it's terrifying because it's sad, because you see that Norman's not there. Like his mother won.
Yeah. Norman's gone.
We have a character whose downfall comes from never being allowed to be his own person.
Yep.
Which takes on an extra layer of sadness. Because little did anyone know at the time, but Anthony Perkins was gay.
Yes. So this is interesting. Anthony Perkins is very interesting because he wasn't unknown at the time. He had done a lot of good stuff before in the 50s. I think he was either nominated or won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for a film.
Nominated.
He was doing good stuff. He was not someone new. At this point, people probably knew his name and was gay, or at least at the very least bisexual. It's kind of hard to pinpoint because he went to therapy. He may have been like convinced that he also liked women. He did marry a woman. I think he married twice.
He definitely has a child, because his son looks just like him. So at the very least, we have biological evidence that Anthony Perkins has had sex with a woman or has donated his material.
It's hard to tell if he was actually truly bi or truly gay, but
regardless, he wasn't able to fully be himself in the public eye.
No, not during this time. And it's interesting with this film because a film like this, like there's this weird thing about horror films that you're in this horror film and like a really good well-known one, and your career doesn't really do much after that.
Yeah.
For Anthony Perkins, he was still prevalent after this towards the 60s and 70s. He did a few of the Psycho sequels, one he even directed.
Yeah.
But even before that, he was still doing work. He wasn't like he
just never took off.
He didn't take off like a Jimmy Stewart or a Cary Grant, but he still did work and was still, around.
It's very possible that was because you can't look at someone the same anymore. after you've played,
typecasting kind of thing. People don't want to cast them in this.
Yeah,
that'll happen.
The same with Janet Leigh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their legacy is.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah,
is Janet Leigh's daughter, and unfortunately, Anthony Perkins ended up dying from HIV and AIDS. But a little quick fun fact: apparently, he was really good friends with Stephen Sondheim. I think they collaborate together with some musical bits. Not like Into the Woods or like Sweeney Todd or anything like that. But
there was.
I think for I don't know if Stephen Sondheim was doing films, I don't know if it was film musicals or he did film scripts and stuff. They collaborated.
You brought up Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yep.
So we actually have two connections to the movie because of that. Jamie Lee Curtis was contacted. Well, not Jamie Lee Curtis, but Janet Leigh was contacted via William Friedkin.
God damn it. I thought, I was certain that there would be no.
Oh, no.
I thought we could skirt.
We have a more direct one after this.
Damn it.
Yeah. Friedkin wanted Jamie Lee Curtis to play Reagan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Janet Leigh said no.
My daughter will not be a part of 4. Whoops.
Yep. And the other is John Gavin, who is Sam. In a couple of years after Psycho, John Gavin would end up in an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Of course.
Or the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, one of the...
It's one of them.
Yeah, one of the two. Anyway, the episode was directed by a very young William Friedkin.
God damn it. God damn it.
Uh-huh. Oh. Yeah.
There's
your Exorcist connection.
That we would be able to have none.
No.
Because I went into the film, behind the scenes and stuff finally.
No.
We can escape. We can't escape.
No.
Damn it.
Can't. There's no escaping. So the issue that people had with the movie, obviously.
There's always going to be issues with people and critics and all that.
And it's interesting that the movie wasn't panned and it wasn't a runaway box office hit.
How many stars did Robert Ebert give it?
It got the reviews that it got in the Times or Variety, stuff like that, they thought it was more
Yeah, I'm sure audience
because were
really scared of it.
A lot of people didn't know, critics didn't know what to do with the fact that Janet Leigh dies.
It's very interesting. I didn't talk about it, but for this being a proto slasher horror film, there's only 2 kills in it.
Yeah.
Technically 4. There was 4 bodies that they dug out of the lake sludge. But really there's just 4. That's not a lot.
No. Not enough to...
there's not really a lot of violence in this film.
No. But the violence that is seen...
Yes.
And the violence that's implied, as well as the sex... the sex that's implied and the nudity that's seen... That was very, very exciting for audiences.
And critics didn't know what to think of it.
And they were they didn't know what to do halfway through the movie. They got tricked by the money being important.
That was just the red herring.
Some of them thought there were some critics who thought that it was too campy and too over the top.
It kind of is.
Very
vaguely some bits.
And even with that, people still really they had a hell of a good time with it. The film ended up with 4 Academy Award nominations.
I mean, it's Alfred Hitchcock. You're gonna get Academy Awards,
and so it has the reputation as being one of the few genuine horror films that have been even acknowledged. I mean, it didn't win anything, but it was at least acknowledged. The final Best Director nomination of Hitchcock's career. And so we get this movie that now has terrified the ever-living shit out of people.
And it's interesting that this movie comes out in 1960 with just 2 years later that has probably much more sex and violence in it, and as well as its subsequent films come after it, is 1962's Dr. No.
But that
people were fine with it.
Yeah, because at least that's, like the good guy,
right,
is winning.
Even if he's slapping around a few women.
Yeah, it's Sean Connery.
Yeah.
It's like nobody's gonna say no to Sean Connery.
No. And it's
when it comes to killing people or anything.
British films and television seem to be more lax with certain rules and guidelines than American.
Yeah, and Dr. No definitely. Because it's not personal to see someone get shot,
right?
Or get like judo chopped into oblivion, the way that James Bond will often do. But like to have someone be stabbed in a shower
with very closed camera angles, in a closed environment.
Yeah, like that was like, you want to talk about another first? Like that's maybe like the first woman's belly button.
It might be
that's ever in a movie.
I mean,
because if you look at any actress in like a bathing suit prior to this time.
What about I think in To Catch a Thief they had the 2-piece bikinis and
it goes above the belly button.
Oh, right.
So it might have midriff, but no belly button.
Ooh.
And it's not Janet Leigh's belly button.
No, it's the body double. I don't remember why.
Double.
I think she wasn't
there.
She was sick, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And also, like, Janet Leigh's not actually nude. She's wearing a bodysuit as well.
Yeah. Janet Leigh said that she was like interviewed for one of the like anniversary releases or something, and she said something like there was like a nude
color.
Yeah, nude color thing, like a patch type of thong type. That would go over her vagine, and she said it kept falling off because of the water.
Oh, okay.
And the way that she was supposed to fall down in the shower, and at one point she was just like, "Fuck it," and she just took it off.
Cool.
Because the camera guys, like the set, the set crew, like they're working. What are they gonna do?
Yep.
Like,
yeah, the crew was they just got the guys from the Alfred Hitchcock Presents crew and just use them.
Really just like,
they had a very small shoestring budget, some might say.
Just really just on the fly decisions being made. And so we get this legacy that perpetuates itself for decades, obviously. And after we get the rise of the slasher in the 70s with a couple of movies that we'll talk about later in the show, in addition to things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yep.
We get things that are more realistic, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then we get these like exploitive,
goofy,
campy, goofy,
80s.
Yeah, like fun but equally disturbing.
Yeah.
Type of movies.
Friday the 13th. Biggest like.
And, Friday the 13th, another example of someone's mother.
Yep.
Really like dictating their lives. And also, and here we get the inversion of Psycho, where the twist is not that we thought that it was Mrs. Voorhees, but that we didn't know it was Mrs. Voorhees. And so, just like, like 2 years later, and by this point, like Ronald Reagan's president. But then we get this, very weird movie, called Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker
in 1982, baby.
Or if you were in some parts of California or the Northwest, you would have known it as Night Warning.
Yes, I was hoping you'd bring up the alternate title.
And so, everything that we're about to say is absolutely true and absolutely weird. But there are some things that don't make sense to me. Not about the movie.
Oh, okay.
Not about the movie, but about William Asher, who made this. You would think that someone would probably have a reputation that's based around doing this weird 80s exploitative take on Oedipus.
Yes.
But really, his career is made on the fact that he directed the bulk of Bewitched.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said but just...
William Asher was married to Elizabeth Montgomery, who was the witch in Bewitched. And so he
did like 3-5 years of Bewitched, like, you know what, I'm going to make a slasher film.
Years later, like 20 years after Bewitched, he ends up doing...
Why not?
But like the thing... also the thing that he's known for... The thing that he has... Okay, so it's mostly television.
Right.
But the other show, and I think this is very interesting, the other show that Asher's career rests on is I Love Lucy.
That makes sense, because, Bewitched, I Love Lucy, the same gambit of sitcom.
But like he was... he was one of the like formative directors of the show. And interestingly enough, and this says a lot about the family, because a lot of people took this very, very seriously. But the same year that Desi and Lucy Arnaz get a divorce is the year that Psycho comes out. So
the family dynamic is broken everywhere, man.
Yeah.
It's a bad time.
Bad time. And so William Asher also, I'm sure everyone, if you haven't seen them, you know of them. All of those beach party movies with Frankie Avalon that came out in the 60s. Mm-hmm. So all of them started with a movie that's conveniently called Beach Party.
Right.
William Asher directed and wrote that. He also directed 5 out of the 7 beach party movies.
There's 7?
There's 7 of them. There's a lot of, there's like...
What the fuck?
There's a lot of them. In between like 6 years, these were like the original Marvel movies. This is like the Beach Party cinematic universe. I'm not even joking about that, because like all of them except for one had Frankie Avalon in it and like a bunch of other people.
That's a lot. That's a big franchise.
Yeah. So you have these beach party movies.
Was the Beastie Boys in it?
No Beastie Boy.
Damn it.
And then he did like a couple of like crime thrillers.
Okay.
Like a couple of like noir movies.
Were they good?
One of them, kind of.
Are the Beach Parties films any good?
No, it's like if you want to like have a look at like what was the fantasy
of the 60s and being like a teen.
Yeah.
Right.
Then that's it. But then after like almost 40 years, around 40 years of working, then William Asher does Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, and it doesn't make any sense in his career, because I mean he did a whole bunch of different genre movies.
He wanted to have his toes in the water,
I guess, because like he did one sci-fi movie in like the late 50s,
right.
But then he does this, and it's one of the most bizarre of the 80s slashers that I have seen in my entire life.
Still very early 80s slasher, 82.
And honestly, there's a lot that comes after it that's just not as good, because it's just not as disturbing without really doing anything other than being disturbing.
Yeah. And so many, many ways that tug on your collar.
Yeah.
Certain views of certain characters are still very prevalent to today.
Yeah. And
that may be the most disturbing bit.
Yeah. And so we get the absolutely bizarre tale of Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker with a title that has absolutely nothing to do. Yeah.
It has more to do than you think.
Yeah. It's the film opens with a car accident. This like ridiculous car accident that involves what looks like the brakes not working.
Faulty brakes, and this This poor couple just like,
and then they just get fucking wrecked. Like,
just stop. They're already dead.
Like the husband who's driving the car gets a log from one of those log trucks. Like this is like 50. Whoa. This is like 30 years prior to Final Destination. And we get the whole log truck thing happening. And then the husband's head is gone.
Yep. Absolutely.
Just gone. Because a tree replaces where his head was. And then, on top of that, the car just drives off a cliff.
Yes. So, like, does he not know if you keep your foot off the gas, the car will eventually slow down?
I guess not.
I feel like he was lead-footing it the whole way.
So, in an interesting connection to Hitchcock's last movie, Family Plot, there's a scene where Bruce Dern's character, who's this like amateur private eye, his girlfriend, who's a fake psychic, someone cuts their brakes, and they're also going around a mountain, whatever, like that, and he like manages to keep driving until the car kind of slows down, and then he sees like a part where he can just run the car into.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
This guy would just...
He's just like, I'm gonna die.
He's swerving everywhere.
Everywhere.
So before that happens, this may be slightly spoiler.
Oh, Barbara Harris. Barbara Harris is her name.
Okay.
Sorry.
This may be a slightly spoilery about what happens in the film, but...
They're gonna know anyway.
Yeah. But we tried so hard to keep it a secret in Psycho. I feel like they deserve that. Maybe not for this film. So... Before the big horrific crash, the couple, the mom and dad, their little baby, their little 3-year-old, 4-year-old baby, they're driving off. The baby's crying because he's like, your parents, and he's being held by his Auntie Cheryl, I think.
Yes.
Yep. So they're like,
Susan
bye,
Tyrell.
Bye. Who does phenomenal in this?
Absolutely fantastic.
Who's, waving bye-bye, and then the film does a weird, like, freeze frame and ominous music on the aunt. And once I realized that once the film, like 30 seconds later, shows the brakes going up, like, oh, she did it.
Yeah. Now, why she did it,
very subtle
you
film.
only know much later.
Yes.
We fast forward about 18 years?
14 years.
14.
A bigger time jump than Endgame.
There you go. And Billy, played by Jimmy McNichol, which is a name that doesn't make sense.
That's too many consonants.
Yeah.
McNichol
is on the verge of going to college.
Getting a scholarship. Sweet old basketball scholarship.
Because he wants to play the basketball over at
Colorado?
University of Denver. Yep. He lives alone with his Aunt Cheryl still to that day. We don't need too much time to realize that Aunt Cheryl kind of has a grip.
She's crazy.
She's crazy. Yeah, she wants Billy to be in a bubble in which she is the bubble.
She wants him to never leave the house.
No. She definitely doesn't want him to go to college because every time he brings it up, she pushes it away.
Like, in reality, no parent would ever turn down their kid getting a full ride to a university.
Not in the year of our Lord 2021.
No, not. I wouldn't even think in any period of time.
I don't know. I mean, this is Reagan's America. Everyone's crazy. Also, like, who gives a shit?
So he's got a chance to do a scholarship. It's his birthday.
Yeah.
He has a girlfriend, ?
Yeah, Julia.
They're going steady.
Yeah.
So he has this great basketball scene. The coach is like a really cool coach, really supportive coach. Like, I'm going to get you into college, kid. And he's talking with his girlfriend. He returns home. She's making like spaghetti. She's like, you will not go. She already doesn't like the girlfriend, even though she hasn't met her.
Just the fact that she takes time away from She takes Billy's attention away from her.
Her baby boy.
And Aunt Cheryl, as we watch, unravels bit by bit, and then at a rate that's ungodly.
She does not. She slams down on the gas.
Yeah.
So they have the confrontation with the scholarship, and she's screaming her head off like,
yeah,
lady, he gets to go to college for free, basically.
Yeah, she don't care. She don't care. And the reason
she's like, what about your job at the hardware store? And she's like, lady, he gets to go to college.
Nope.
He could be an NBA star.
She wants Billy at home because every time we see Billy with his shirt off, she's looking kind of long and hard at him.
Kind of vaguely biting her lip.
Yeah. We get the return of everyone's favorite topic, incest.
Whoa.
For the second time this episode.
Did we mention it the first?
No, we didn't, but it was there. It was implied.
Oh, for Psycho, brief ancestral bits with Norman and Mama?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like it was implied in the movie.
Well, you said second time, we hadn't talked about it. We're talking about it now.
Yeah. See, now it's okay to mention incest.
Well, it's Oedipus. Oedipus is like a classic. Everyone loves Oedipus.
Yeah.
Incest is fine.
Yeah. So we
it's
get...
not fine.
We get this very disturbing relationship between the two.
Yeah, it starts out really cute and innocent and loving, and then just with that college argument, just like, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah, in the same way that mothers freaked out during the 50s and suddenly became very overbearing, Aunt Cheryl does the same thing, except she takes it to such an extent that she doesn't want Billy to go away so much that I think she snaps, and her inner desire for him suddenly becomes the outer desire.
It's because he's at a time where he's hit puberty. He's still in the midst of puberty. He's like 16, 17, 18, that range. 17-ish? Yeah, we'll say 17.
Well, because he's in his...
He's like 3 or 4 at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
Then a jump. 17, 18.
Yeah.
He's going through puberty. He's changing into a young, fine, young, handsome man. He's got a girlfriend. He's on the midst of like all teenagers do at some point. Maybe some stay home for a few years more, but they either go off, get a job and a house and everything, or they go off to college. And it's happening all at once, and she just can't handle it. I forget where Billy goes, but Aunt Cheryl's, they're getting either the TV or the AC fixed. Another whiplash of the character. She's just like flaunting herself over the repairman. She's like, take me.
Yeah. And she sets herself up to be falsely raped so that she can then...
Yeah. Now, I'm still on the verge of whether she had planned that or she just seeing Billy for so long, she's like, I need release.
I mean, that's very likely an aspect of it, but I think it was more...
Very intentional.
Of she wanted the traumatic incident so
Billy
that
stay.
Billy would forever be guilted into staying.
Yeah, so she's like throwing herself on this repairman. He refuses at first. He's like, I want you to give me a blowjob, lady. What this man was originally just, a man doing his job. He gets a bit creepy.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a bit, 4C... slightly rapey. He's not wrong. Yeah. I mean, but I'm not going to say it because it's this. She does instigate it. But
she does.
I know. It feels weird to say that.
Yeah.
Really, in a society where rape is still like an issue that isn't taken seriously.
I think knowing what her intention is for having this repairman over to begin with, I think just throws it into a completely different.
Yeah.
And so she kills the guy.
She takes a knife and just goes to town.
Mm-hmm. And Billy sees this.
He sees this through the window. He rushes in.
Yeah. And now, whether Billy likes it or not, he's an accessory to...
Yeah, because he's holding
murder.
The knife. He's covered in blood. So he's like over the top pawing at him.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hold me. Then the neighbors come in.
Yeah.
And they see this.
It just looks really bad.
Yeah. I didn't expect this film to take this turn, by the way.
Yeah.
I didn't expect this at all. It completely changes what I thought the film was going to be about. Because I was expecting a kind of like misery situation, and it kind of does that. But I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah. So a cop gets involved.
The worst cop in cinema and human history. This guy sucks. Not just as a cop, but as a human being.
Yeah.
He's terrible at his job.
Yeah. And Carlson, I think it's Detective Carlson or something. And so he starts investigating. And the thing that he picks up on is that this relationship between Aunt Cheryl and Billy is a lot like what he thinks the relationships between mothers and sons are, where the sons end up gay.
Very overbearing.
And so he suspects Billy of being gay because he finds out that...
Well, first of all, like, he just straight away just thinks Billy did it.
Yeah.
Like, he is hard.
Yeah, he wants Billy to be...
He wants to throw this kid in jail.
Yeah.
I don't know why at the very beginning, but he has it out for this kid.
Probably because Billy's, I don't know, just different, I guess. Like,
so he starts, quote, investigating, which he kind of does. Yeah. But, like, in a way that he starts to lose focus. So
because he ends up finding out shit that doesn't relate to what actually
happened. It relates to his own narrative. Yeah. But that's not the truth.
Like, he tries to warp the narrative into what he wants it to be.
Kind of how my cops do sometimes.
Yeah. And part of that involves the technician actually, he notices a
ring,
or like a wedding ring.
Uh-huh.
He knows that the repairman's not married. And
or he was. Because that gets brought up. He was married, just not right now.
Yeah. And so he does some investigating and finds out that the repairman's actually gay. And not only is he gay, but his partner is Billy's basketball coach.
Yes, I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because this is for 1982, a very positive outlook towards the LGBT community.
Yeah.
Not from the cop's point of view, but just how the film presents a gay character. Incredibly progressive and positive for the time. Insanely so. I was shocked.
Yeah, no, here we have an example of a middle-aged gay man who's not presented as a pedophile
or a pervert.
As a leather daddy.
Yes, because kind of like another horror film that came out, not during this time, but after 86, 87 was Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah.
Where it involves a coach to the main character, whose name I forget. And he's leather daddy. Yeah. Because the high school kid finds him at this bar. I don't know why he's at the bar. And he's in this leather outfit, like leather cap and leather chaps, like just the vest. And he, for some reason, brings the kid to the school to run track and take a shower. Very perverse and, icky. And that's like 5-6 years after this film. But this film treats
the basketball coach as a person.
Yes, as all people who are gay, lesbian, trans, whatever, should be. A human being, a person.
Yeah.
No different from many of us.
And
beautifully, for dingy, weird slasher film.
Yeah.
Directed by a guy who did sitcoms.
Yeah.
In the 50s. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Billy and for the basketball coach and for everyone involved, this supportive relationship between the coach and Billy is viewed as being homoerotic by the cop, who comes up with the narrative that Billy killed the technician because of this weird
jealousy.
Yeah, jealousy. This like menage gone wrong kind of thing.
Weird triangle.
Yeah,
completely
off the
not
rails.
right.
Yeah.
Like, he is so convinced.
Yeah.
So he's like, you're going to quit or I'm going to tell everyone that you're gay.
Yeah. And so the coach is blackmailed into leaving, and
Billy's like, I don't care about that.
yeah.
Which is like 1982. He would have been like, no, get away from me. But Billy's like, no, I don't care. I just want you to be my coach.
Yeah.
Not because he's in love with the coach.
Yeah.
But because the coach is a good guy.
Yeah. And like, he actually wants him to go to college, and believes in him.
Because he's
no one else does.
the father figure that Billy never had.
Yeah. And then we get to the mother figure that he never had, but actually does, because
And never wanted.
yeah. So while all of this is happening, Billy is consistently told to stay out of the attic.
Because he's Aunt Cheryl's renovating.
Yeah. And at one point he goes up there and he finds some documents, some like newspaper clippings and stuff of things that are weird. And so he continues his investigation, and he ends up finding a birth certificate.
Yes.
In Aunt Cheryl's possession, like in like a little keepsafe box.
Oh no, you're skipping a lot.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
should we talk about the stuff you skipped, or we'll get back to it?
I mean, we talk about what I skipped.
So yeah, he starts rummaging into stuff. He falls off the attic, and Aunt Cheryl's like doting him as he does. And so it's the night of the big game, because a talent scout's coming from Denver.
Oh yeah, she starts to poison him.
She drugs his milk.
Yeah.
Which is very ironic, since, mother's milk.
Yeah. No, it's another example of
this perverse bastardization of motherhood. And it's interesting that, like, before Aunt Cheryl was talking about how, like, the coach is a pervert and a deviant, when she's far more.
Yeah. Yeah, she's
which is even
horrible.
more interesting, because I promise we'll get back to it, but it's important. Very subtle. It's scattered through all out the house, but it's never directly referenced or talked about. Is all the religious symbols in the house.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Crucifixes, pictures of Jesus, like Mother Mary statues, like it's everywhere. And they don't address it at all. It's a great bit of filmmaking and writing where, like, just from all that, you can tell what kind of person Aunt Cheryl is. A very devout person who has these very conservative, rigid views. And that thing with, it's interesting because it reminds me of the idea of the, like, rigidness of, like, Catholicism, and going back to, like, contraceptives and stuff, where they're very rigid about sex and stuff, but then you have, like, the perversion of the Catholic Church and with pedophilia with the priests. And that thing of, like, they're so rigid and strict about sex, but they're kind of obsessed with it. So you have that, and so she starts poisoning the milk.
Just putting drops of whatever that was into it.
Yeah, and he fails the game, and he hits his head, and it's a few days later, and he's not in his room. He's in the attic that he's prepared from, and it's not the room you would think a 17 to 18-year-old boy would have. It's the room of a 10-year-old child with toys and drawings and stuff.
Yeah.
So he's trying to... Billy's her baby, so he wants to turn him into a baby. He's just, baby's got to have his milk, so he just continually
keeps drugging him.
Yeah.
And while in this drugged up stupor, this is where he finds the...
Yeah. There's a scene where him and his girlfriend have sex.
Oh, yeah, and Aunt Cheryl finds him, and she, like, freaks the fuck out, and it's just... Ugh.
Yep, and it's because the sex scene happens because there's a scene with the girlfriend and Trump cop.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he starts investigating the cop. The cop investigates Julia, and he starts asking, like, have the two of you had sex yet? And
She's like, that's none of your business.
Yeah.
Hey, valid.
Yeah. And so he concludes that they haven't.
That means, it has to be.
So he has to be, he's gay. Exactly. Not that they're like 17-year-olds and like maybe they just haven't had sex yet.
You know, sex is scary.
Yeah. And so
they have sex.
So yeah,
to prove the cop wrong, even though he's not watching.
Yeah. And it backfires in the sense that Cheryl, finds them.
Livid. See,
and
you can't have this whore, this harlot slut here.
Yeah.
Very much the same type of rigid, conservative, girls in boys' rooms and stuff like that. After that happens in the game and the concussion and your new room and forget what she originally had in the box that they took out for him. I don't remember. But he's like, no, I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So she takes the box and she's still continuously drugging him, making him lucid and, well-behaved.
Like, weak enough to the point where he can't get out of bed, really.
Yeah.
Or if he does and he's just like out of it.
So he concocts a plan. I don't know when this happens. He meets up with Julia, the girlfriend. He's like, I need to know what she's hiding because he's suspecting something. So he's like, I need to distract her while I look into her special box.
Mm-hmm. And in the special box, he finds a birth certificate.
What could it be?
And the birth certificate says that the man that he found a picture of.
Yep. That was it. You
Yeah.
saw a picture and like, what's that? Like, no, none of your business. Scream. I hate you.
That man is his father.
Oh my God.
That was Craig, I believe.
Not the father
That he...
and his mother drove off and got killed. It's Aunt Cheryl's old boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the film, she's like talking to herself. As the film goes on, she talks and mumbles to herself more and more.
Mm-hmm. The mother listed on the birth certificate is...
What is it?
Aunt Cheryl.
Oh my God. The aunt was the mom? That makes it even creepier.
Yep. And we gather from this and what Aunt Cheryl tells us that the boyfriend was not going to marry Cheryl and was instead going to marry her sister.
Yeah. Yes, I think because...
Or at least, like, if not marry her, then, like, left her.
Yeah, it's weird because... So Aunt Cheryl has the baby, little Billy. She gives him up for adoption. Her sister adopts him, right?
Yeah.
With not the boyfriend that left her, but no, I guess he remarried someone else.
What we have is something that somehow was bad and is now worse, where it's not that the aunt wants her nephew.
She wants her son.
She wants her son. And
so the aunt cuts her hair. It's all short.
Yeah.
She's wearing like this weird dress thing.
Yeah.
She's like, you can tell she's unhinged at this point. She's walking weird. She's talking to herself.
Yeah, she like threatens a neighbor. And
the girlfriend comes over to distract him and
hits her.
Beats her on the head with
a meat tenderizer.
Yep, there's like blood everywhere.
Yeah.
On like the refrigerator.
Yeah.
And the neighbor comes in, like checking in.
What's going on?
Yeah, and where's body blood? There's no body. There's no. She wipes off the blood, and like Billy comes in. She's just like, Billy's like conked out of his mind with the drugs, and he comes in stumbling in. So she takes him. At this point, she's just dousing the milk with whatever the sedative is.
I think she empties the bottle
into
the carton.
So she hurries and puts her nephew to bed, and he realizes, and it's revealed, and like now she's like really unhinged because she's making him drink it, but she's like forcing it. She's like, drink it, and the milk is getting everywhere. And she, I know that was disgusting. Sorry. She licks his face.
Yeah.
And like the neighbor downstairs snooping around, she finds out some stuff.
She overhears the the conversation between Cheryl and Billy, and she finds out that Cheryl's the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so the neighbor tries to call the cops by pretending that she's going to call her husband because it's raining. And then she ends up getting
Moited.
Yep.
There's a body count in this film.
And the body count rises quickly.
Yeah, so she calls the cops, and so there's racist cop. I'm sure he's racist. He is racist because there's a scene with this where he's pointing his gun at like a Hispanic man.
Yeah.
In his office. Like, chill out.
Yeah, no, he can't.
Look, 2020, he lost. Get over it.
He's just bad.
So, so there's the other cop who's, actually doing sensible detective work and has been suspecting something's wrong, something nefarious happening with the aunt because he's figuring out that there was a weird thing with the brakes and stuff. He's figuring out. Racist Trump cop is like, no, it has to be the kid. You're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So that the good cop goes in to investigates the property, and you know what? As the film goes on, it's a really big property. There's like a lot of land.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like shrubbery and stuff and ponds and things.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like the Bates Motel.
Yeah. So he is doing some looking around, and he discovers Julia. She's alive. I didn't expect that.
And when he does discover her, Cheryl is in the shed.
Yes.
With them. And guy goes to turn on the light and gets his hand chopped off.
Yes.
And then he gets stabbed a lot.
The body count
it's getting higher. So while this is happening, and eventually Cheryl ends up getting back to the house.
Yep.
There's a confrontation with Billy where she tries to strangle Billy with a telephone wire.
Because he calls the cops.
Yeah. And so she's got the cord around his neck, and it's this weird kind of like, it's something that you would expect in a very perverted BDSM type of way.
Yeah.
Like not perverted because it's BDSM, but like a perverted,
Erotic.
Yeah. During the struggle, Billy, in self-defense, takes a crocheting needle.
Stabs her.
And stabs her in the heart. And in this very, very disturbingly beautiful moment, in her last moment of life, Cheryl kisses Billy.
Yeah.
And then dies in his arms. And it's like, it's terrible.
I know.
It's so terrible. But like that final, it's like literally all of the life that she had left in her body. Kisses him, dies. Then the cop,
So what that happened? I think he attacks her with a knife, and he kills her with a fire poker through the stomach. That's what happens. Because he thinks he's down, but he gets back up, and this time she's like, I'm gonna kill the boy I love.
Yeah, that's
stabs her with the stomach and a little smooch.
Yeah,
just a loving mother-son smooch. So he's covered in blood. There's like 50 dead people on the property.
There's so many dead people.
So he calls, the only person he can trust to call is the coach. Because the coach said earlier, if you need anything.
Takes him up on that offer. So be careful who you say that to. And so when the coach is there and Detective Carlson shows up.
With a bunch of other police officers.
Yeah. And he sees the scene that he expected all along. The out of context, discovery of Billy, the coach, knives, blood, bodies, all of that.
He's like, oh, yes, perfect.
And then,
even though it's not what the truth is, he's of course going to fake news.
Yeah,
fake news it.
And
but you got like, Julia trying to back him up. She's in an hysterical fit because of what happened,
and nobody's believing
like, take her away.
Yeah. And so Carlson goes to shoot.
He takes out his gun. He's been itching to use that gun all film. He's like, I'm going to make America great again with this gun. Like, I'm going to kill the deviants and perverts of America.
Yeah. And instead what happens is coach ends up knocking the gun out of his hand.
Yep.
And Billy picks it up and shoots the cop. Blows him away. And
good job, Billy.
Then right after that, Julia comes in.
And the cop.
The cop's there, and
he's like, "Oh, Billy."
Yeah. So Billy and Julia are holding each other, and it's done. And we find out via
in a weird, like, you know how films are like text
like
is what
true story stuff.
Yeah. And Billy puts on trial, and he's acquitted
because he's found insane,
temporary insanity.
Yeah, and then Billy and Julia end up going to University of Denver after all.
It's like a weird, bizarre, happy ending.
Yeah, and except a lot of people are dead.
Like 5 people.
Yeah,
it's a massive body count.
Yeah, and this reputation that the it's a cult movie. It's a cult classic. It's over the top, but like it's done very well.
Yep.
And because of how disturbing the sex is, and like the sex that's not even there.
Not the Billy and Julia sex. That's actually very tame and very tasteful.
Yeah. But like the
implied,
desire, is so rough that the movie ended up being put on the video nasty list.
Video nasties.
And
Margaret Thatcher not like.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think it says a lot about the subject matter that even now, like 40 years after, that it's still very disturbing. That that incest remains a taboo enough topic that it's still effective.
Yeah, like Game of Thrones.
I didn't watch it, so.
Oh, there's like incest in Game of Thrones.
Oh, with the brother and sister, I heard about that.
There's like, the only thing that pops into my head is like Boone and his sister on Lost, but they're stepsisters and they like have sex and stuff like as a flashback. It's not relevant, but you know, you don't see it often.
Yeah, and you know what happens when you do that is you end up, dead.
Yep.
So,
what's interesting is 2 things interesting. The title, because I had mentioned the title, Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker. It's a fun, campy title.
It's children's rhyme.
Yes, Butcher Baker, Candle Maker.
Yeah.
It's a line from a nursery rhyme, which just wraps up the film in a nice bow of, you know, like a mother telling his son a nursery rhyme. And Aunt Cheryl wanting to take care of the boy, but, you know, also wanting to have sex with him.
Yeah.
And we didn't even discuss it at all, just very briefly. Let's talk about William Paxton.
Very brief. He's in there for like a few minutes.
People are like, who's William Paxton?
Bill.
We're talking about.
That's Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton. Not his first film. I think his second film. And it's like, I didn't even know because he's credited as William Paxton.
Yeah.
Paxton. And I'm like, okay. But then I see him like, is that
just 3 years later, going to be an alien?
I know. Is that goddamn Bill Paxton?
Yep.
Like 3 years before like his career takes off. And he's like the bully. He doesn't have much of a role, but it's just interesting that like James Cameron saw this film and was like, I want that guy. It's just this weird like thing with like actors, now well-known actors, or was, rest in peace, Bill Paxton. They started out in these weird, crappy, campy horror films.
Yeah.
You got, I don't know if I mentioned this on an earlier episode, but you have, Bill Paxton in this, Kevin Bacon in Friday the 13th. You have Paul Rudd in Halloween 6.
Johnny Depp in
Nightmare on Elm Street. Matthew McConaughey in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Next Generation, I think.
Yeah.
It's just this interesting thing where these now well-known, famous, very good actors and actresses start out in horror films.
Yeah. I mean, you got Jack Nicholson in Little Shop of Horrors.
Roger Corman.
Yeah, it started a lot of careers.
A lot.
So this is the part where we talk about them together.
Yes.
In a little bit. So
I've a lot more now that we're talking about it.
A lot more similarities than
yes, than what you might think.
Yeah. The way that horror and comedy both work is the same exact setup.
Yep.
With tension and release, and both of these movies work because in the way that they build up tension with the audience. Psycho works because it does release. Butcher Baker works because it doesn't. And I mean release in terms of like giving you what you expect and what you want. You know, the shower, not just the shower scene, but the reveal in Psycho is the now I finally know.
Yeah, all the pieces have come together. Oh, this is what this is about.
And Butcher Baker, from the moment you expect there to be an incestual moment of sexual union, you never get it.
Because of course the son's not like, yeah, I'm gonna have sex with my aunt mom.
Yeah, but no, but like, you know, like he could, you know, she could. I mean, she drugs him for so much of the movie that like she could take advantage. But like, there's never anything graphic. I guess is what I'm getting at. And so because of that, these two movies end up showing us that we have something to fear in every aspect of our lives, like regardless of like all the socio-political bullshit that's happening like around you, the terror that can come from within the home is just as bad, if not worse, than anything outside of it.
What comes in the home and the friendly guy from down the road who owns a quaint little motel.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I was thinking about when like looking up all the Ed Gein stuff is that both of these movies are coming out at a very interesting time in terms of America's fascination with serial killers and like public murder.
Because this is like, we're talking about Psycho or when Butcher Baker comes out?
Both.
Okay. Because 60s, you didn't really, serial killers weren't as prevalent. But
no, exactly. Like it's like Psycho's coming out before
the 70s
the term,
boom.
Yeah, like the term doesn't exist yet. You know, this is an entire decade before Manson.
I mean, just 70s and 80s, you have like
all of them.
Son of Sam, Ted Bundy, Manson, Night Stalker.
Yeah. Like
just a baby boom of serial killers. It's insane.
Yeah. And so like Butcher Baker's coming out like after most of these
have already
happened.
Tried in jail.
You know, like this is a couple, like Butcher Baker's coming out like a couple of years after Summer of Sam.
Yep.
Like the idea of domestic terror is such an understood and almost accepted way of life that it's almost like Butcher Baker is having to throw the incest in there to make it shocking.
Yeah.
That it's like, it's not just that the home is horrifying, but like, what if
the family values have been bastardized and perverted?
You know, like what you thought you knew doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you thought the person was your aunt? No. Actually, they're your mother, and they're still trying to fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, it's still so... it's like it's taking any fabric of reality in which you feel safe, and it's destroying it.
Yep.
And I think in this, I really... I think this is a good way to kind of like tie everything together is the thing that Hitchcock was trying to say with Psycho, and he tried to do this, and I think he did do this with a lot of his movies, and I think especially his stuff after Psycho, is the thing that's most terrifying is that literally anything can happen to you at any point in time.
Yeah, because after Psycho, because
he does the birds.
Hitchcock before this, he didn't do horror. He did thriller. He did suspense. I mean, I guess Rebecca could have been slightly considered. That's more suspense and thriller.
Yeah.
But yeah, after this, he just starts like you did, like you said, Birds, which is like,
And then Frenzy is, like a 70s take on Jack the Ripper.
oh really?
Kind of like it's very good. It's a lot better than the reputation it has.
Mm-hmm.
And Family Plot is more of like the murder mystery
Kind of back
with elements of comedy.
kind of back to form.
Yeah. But like Frenzy is like, oh, you mean the violence in Psycho isn't considered violent anymore? Okay.
Right.
You're going to watch someone be strangled on camera. Like, not like literally, of course, but I mean, like, you're going to watch someone, you're going to watch a strangulation as it happens. And it's the randomness of all of this. Like that's the whole thing that the Birds is about.
Yep.
Like,
just bird attacking.
it's just literally like one day you could be walking and birds could just descend from the sky and start terrorizing.
Which is
you.
interesting because this is it came out 63. Yeah, just a few years after. People weren't really doing creature features like this anymore. This is more like a 50s thing, like Them.
Yeah.
Or things like that, where it's just, giant ants attacking, birds attacking. This was a point where the 50s creature feature was going out of style. They didn't really do that anymore.
It wasn't until Jaws that they came back.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we get that, and it's really, it's like Psycho is kind of like Hitchcock's life philosophy, or at least like his like artistic philosophy. Regardless of what Marion Crane decides, the universe is already
decided for her. Her fate.
Because she's decided. It's like, you know what? I took this money. I only spent a little over $700 of it.
Yep.
There's still $39,000 left.
I'm gonna return it.
I'm gonna go back. It's only been a day. I'll go back and return it. Everything will be better. It doesn't matter. No. Because she stopped at the wrong place.
At the wrong time.
At the wrong time.
With the wrong man.
Yep. And now she's dead. And just think about how many victims of the serial killers.
Yeah. If it wasn't her, it would have been someone else.
Someone else. It's already been someone else.
Yes, 2 other girls.
Yeah. And so, and with Butcher Baker, I mean, Julia doesn't have to be Billy's boyfriend, Billy's girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Like,
she could just be a friend.
Yeah.
A neighbor.
Like, but because she's dating this one person, she's then thrown into this horrific tangle.
Yeah.
And I mean, Billy didn't choose to have his, certifiable aunt decide to form this incestuous connection to him.
Yep.
Like he didn't choose it. Like he was literally born into it.
Oh, we didn't, just briefly, because it'll also tie into Psycho. The aunt kept the dead body of the boyfriend in the attic too.
Yeah.
Much like Norman did with his mom.
Yeah. And so this idea of
clinging on to something.
Yeah, your obsession becomes deadly.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that the films aren't saying that obsession in general is bad.
No, it can be.
It can be. I mean, anyone who looks at Hitchcock's body of work knows for 4 seconds knows that the man had obsessions that played out over and over again. But that was his outlet. Like his obsessions had one form of being carried out, and for some people, their obsessions,
it drives it consumes them. It drives them to do.
Instead of making movies about murder, they actually go and murder people.
Yeah.
What we have are 2 movies that not only say that anything can happen to you, but show that literally anything can happen.
Literally, like the most mundane thing.
Yeah. And maybe one day you're just driving and all of a sudden a bunch of birds are going to attack you. It's possible. So, Quinton, what's your quote of the day?
To end it off?
Yeah.
Bathroom. No one's gonna get that.
I mean, if they watch the trailer for Psycho, then
Trailer's great. Let's just, you know what? It's 6 minutes. We'll briefly talk about the trailer. The theatrical release trailer for Psycho. It's my favorite trailer of all time. I wish other films did it.
Yeah.
So, what it is just Alfred Hitchcock exploring the sets.
Like almost spoiling things and then deciding, wait.
So it's like, there's a part where it's like, and this is where the heinous murder happened. The blood was everywhere. And then he goes into such visceral detail about those murders and stuff. When it comes to like characters, like, oh, let's not get into that right now. And it's the trailer is like funny.
Yeah.
Because
he at one point he looks at the painting that is covering the peephole, and he says, now this painting will show very significant or something like that later in the film, and then he just walks away from it. Yeah, and
there's a bit where it's like
the toilet,
and he's in the Norman Bates' mom's bedroom. He's like, this is the wardrobe where her clothes are, and he opens it. He just looks at the camera like, because there's nothing in there, just I guess radio clothes, and then there's the point where let's explore elsewhere, and he opens the door and just opens it. He opens it and then closes it immediately. Goes bathroom. It's my favorite part of the whole thing. And then he goes into the Bates Motel, explores that, and he's like, and this is where the crime happened. And he opens the curtain and immediately cuts to the bit of the film where it opens in the film and Dan Lee is seen screaming.
It's Vera Miles in the trailer.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's not Janet Leigh?
No.
That's awesome.
It literally, like, it took years for people to realize that she wasn't in the trailer. It wasn't until people had, like, home entertainment, basically.
Oh, yeah.
They were able to pause it, and you're like, wait, that's not Janet Leigh. But it's absolutely understandable. Like, honestly, like, if no one had mentioned it, like, we would still believe. Or like, that's Janet Leigh. Like, that looks like the scene in the movie. No. It's Vera Miles.
Well, color me impressed.
Yep.
Bathroom.
Well, thanks for joining our talk on this week's episode of Visceral Reactions. I'm Matthew Germanis.
I'm Quinton Williams.
And like, review, subscribe, wherever podcasts come from. And that's a wrap.
We'll see you next time. Oh, should we tell them what next episode's going to be about?
Yeah.
So we're leaving the air of family murder and horror into urban legend.
Yes.
So our two films for next week will be 1992's Candyman
and 1980's Alligator.
You have probably only heard about one of these films.
All right. See you then, folks.
Bye.